In 4.3 right now, we're going to go through and take some notes over proving triangles are congruent, and there are 5 different ways to do this. And in this first video, we're going to go through just one of the ways. The first way is by side, side, side. You can see right here, so the acronym for it is going to be SSS. So notice it's SSS for side, side, side. And what it is if we have 3 sides of one triangle that are congruent to 3 sides of a second triangle, then the 2 triangles are congruent to each other. So in our example right down here, you can see that if we have our 2 pictures right here, you can see that all 3 sides are congruent to each other. Then we know that the 2 triangles are congruent. So our reasons is we're going to match them up. So side AB is going to be congruent to, let's get this in color. So AB is congruent to RS. Next we have side BC is congruent to side ST. And then lastly we have side CA is going to be congruent to TR. And because we know that all 3 of them are congruent to each other, then we can say that our 3 triangles are congruent. So what you got to watch out for is look at each letter individually. So A right here is between the red and the purple. So our R is our angle that matches up with it. So R goes first. Next, B is between the red and the blue, and S is between the red and the blue. So that's my next letter. And then lastly, I have my C, which is between the blue and the purple, so angle T is my last one. And that is the only way that you can write it. There is a very specific way. So if the first triangle is set up as ABC, the second one needs to be lined up so that the first letters, second letters, and third letters all are corresponding, and those are congruent to each other as well. In this problem, we're going to use the side, side, side congruent postulate to prove that the 2 triangles are congruent. This is more of a paragraph proof because we're writing our answers and statements in sentence format instead of a 2-column proof, but it works the same way. So first we look at what we are given. So we are given that KL is congruent to NL. So that's the first part. So it is given that KL is congruent to NL. Next, we also see that KM, so right here with our 2 slashes, is congruent to NM. And that's just because it is the given information. So the part that we always are going to watch out for is if we share a side here in the middle, we can say that it's congruent to itself by the reflexive property. So by the reflexive property, we can say that LM is congruent to segment LM. That's by the reflexive property. So by the side, side, side congruence postulate, we can now conclude that triangle KLM is congruent to triangle NLM. So for the last 2 questions on this page, we have to state the 2 triangles are congruent by side, side, side. So we need to see if it's even possible. So in this first one, we can see that we have 2 sides that are matched up together. AE is congruent to BD. CE is congruent to DF. So we do see that all 3 sides are congruent. So we can say yes, the 2 triangles are congruent by side, side, side. So the next one, we see that there's a side that they share. Remember, that's the reflexive property. Because now we can see that LS is congruent to NP, SP is congruent to LN, and then LP is congruent to LP. We do see that all 3 sides are congruent. So we can say yes, our 2 triangles are congruent by side, side, side. On these 3 examples, you want to be able to tell if the congruent statement is written correctly for the triangle, or if you can even write one to begin with. So we can see our triangles that yes, we are going to have 3 sides that are congruent, so they are congruent. So next we want to check to see if the congruent statements are set up correctly. So remember, the first letter has to go with the first letter, so D congruent to H. So if you look at where they're at, it's between the 2 marks and the 1 and 2 marks and the 1, so that side works. Then you want to look for the F. So F is between the 2 marks and the 3 marks. And the next letter is my J, and that is also between the 3 marks and my 2 marks, so the J works. Lastly, we want to check the G. So the G and the K to see if they're in the same location. So it's between the 1 mark and the 3 marks. 1 mark and 3 marks. So we can say yes. 2 triangles are congruent, and our corresponding angles are congruent as well that we pointed out. So for number 4, we need to look at the numbers themselves. We have 7 is congruent to 7, 9 is congruent to 9, that's our reflexive property, but look at this last side. So CD inside AB. So in our congruent statement, it shows that they're congruent, but they're not actually congruent. So these are not congruent triangles. And it's because our segment AB is not congruent. So how we show that is we're just going to put a slash through it. So it's not congruent to each other. So they're not congruent triangles. All right, so for number 5, we can see that all 3 sides are congruent. So again, if you check the different sides, so we could also check QP is congruent to RS, that's set up correctly. PT is a 3, and ST is a 3. And then the Q with the T, and then the R with the T, that those do match up correspondingly. So the corresponding parts are congruent. So for number 6, we want to see what piece are we missing. So state the third congruence that must be given to prove the 2 triangles are congruent by side, side, side. So in number 6, we already know that these 2 pieces, so XZ and XZ, are congruent just by the reflexive property. And you have to think of that's given to you in the picture. So that is not what we are missing. So what we are missing is the third side, and that would be these 2 sides right here. So we need that WZ is congruent to ZY to prove the 2 triangles are congruent by side, side, side. All right, so for number 7, same idea. This one's a little more obvious. So again, we're missing these pieces. So we need BE to be congruent to ED to prove the 2 triangles are congruent by side, side, side. This question is more of just a review a little bit, so from previously, but which statement down below is not true based on the congruent statement, so be careful of not true. So you're looking at the angles, or the sides that's paired up. So DF is right there, and P also uses the same 2 locations, so that one does work, that one's true. So next we want to check on EF. So EF uses the last 2 letters, and OP uses the last 2 letters, so that one works. Angle F is right here, and angle O is right there, so it's not paired up correctly, so that looks like that's the one we're missing. And then angle D is congruent to angle N. Those are the first 2 letters. So the 3 that I've got checks on for work, so that means that letter H does not work, and that's because for the true statement, we would have to have angle F is really congruent to angle P, and angle O is congruent to angle E. So this is what you'd have to see if you wanted to write them as true statements. That's how you could have used those letters. So remember, from this video, you want to know what is side, 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 where you can use it, what you're looking for, and we're going to be adding more to it in the days to come.